This tale is about the invisible thread of compassion that connects us all, about the small kindnesses we've forgotten, but which changed everything. Let yourself drift as we explore this quiet museum where nothing is ever truly lost. Elena Vasquez was 54 years old, successful by any external measure. She was a partner at a prestigious law firm, had a beautiful home in the suburbs, drove a car that purred like a contented cat. Her children were grown and thriving. Her marriage, while not passionate, was comfortable and stable. But Elena felt hollow, empty in a way she couldn't articulate. She went through her days with mechanical precision, doing everything right, feeling nothing much at all. It was on a Tuesday evening, walking home from the train station, that Elena noticed the museum. It stood between two office buildings she passed every day had passed. Every day for 15 years, and yet she'd never seen it before. The building was small and elegant, with marble steps and brass fixtures that gleamed in the streetlight. Above the door, in letters that seemed to shimmer, the Museum of Forgotten Kindnesses. Elena stopped. She had nowhere to be. Her husband was working late. Her evening stretched ahead, empty and shapeless. She climbed the steps and pushed open the door. Inside, the museum was quiet and warmly lit. The floors were polished wood that creaked gently underfoot. The walls were painted a soft cream color, and everywhere, on pedestals in glass cases hanging from the ceiling, were objects. Ordinary objects. A pair of worn shoes, a handwritten note, a child's drawing, a coffee cup, a book with a cracked spine. An elderly woman approached from a side room. She was tiny and round, with white hair in a neat bun and glasses that caught the light. She wore a cardigan, despite the warmth, and moved with the careful grace of someone who had lived many years. "Welcome," she said. Her voice was warm, like honey and tea. "I'm Vera. I'm the curator here." "What is this place?" Elena asked. "Exactly what the sign says," Vera replied with a gentle smile. "A museum of forgotten kindnesses. Would you like a tour?" Elena found herself nodding, though she couldn't have said why. There was something about Vera, about the museum, that bypassed her usual skepticism and spoke to something deeper. "Wonderful," Vera said. "Let me show you something." Vera led Elena to the first exhibit, a pair of child-sized rain boots, bright yellow, with cartoon frogs on them. "These," Vera said, "belonged to a little girl named Maria. She was 6 years old, growing up in a city far from here, in a neighborhood where kindness was scarce. One rainy morning, she was walking to school and stepped in a puddle. Her shoes, her only shoes, got soaked through. Vera adjusted her glasses and continued. A crossing guard saw her crying. The crossing guard was poor herself, struggling to make ends meet. But she took Maria to a nearby store and bought her these boots. Spent money she didn't really have. Maria wore them for years until she outgrew them. "That's sweet," Elena said. But why is it in a museum? Because Maria forgot, Vera said simply. She grew up, moved away, went to college, became an engineer. She had a good life, but somewhere along the way, she forgot about the crossing guard, forgot about the kindness that had warmed her on that cold, wet morning, the kindness that had shown her that people could be good, that the world wasn't entirely harsh. Vera touched the glass case gently. But the kindness still happened. It still mattered. Just because Maria forgot doesn't mean it didn't change her life in small ways. Doesn't mean it didn't matter. They moved to the next exhibit, a coffee cup, plain white ceramic, slightly chipped. This cup, Vera said, was used by a man named James. He was a college student, pulling all-nighters, stressed and anxious. One night, studying at a 24-hour diner, he realized he didn't have enough money for the coffee he'd already drunk. The waitress saw his panic. She smiled and said it was on the house. This cup held that free coffee. James doesn't remember this? Elena asked. He remembers the stress of college. He remembers graduating. But this specific moment, this specific kindness, lost in the blur of memory, yet it mattered. It helped him get through that night. It showed him compassion when he needed it. Exhibit after exhibit, Vera showed Elena forgotten kindnesses. A handwritten note from a teacher who had believed in a struggling student, a blanket that a homeless shelter volunteer had tucked around a cold child, a phone call from a friend checking in at exactly the moment when someone was considering giving up. Each one forgotten by the recipient, each one preserved here. Why? Elena finally asked. Why preserve things people don't even remember? Vera looked at her with eyes that seemed to see more than just surface. Because forgetting doesn't erase impact, she said. Because every kindness changes the world in small ways, whether we remember it or not. Because people need to know that their compassion matters even when no one thanks them, even when the recipient forgets entirely. She gestured around the museum. Every person who has ever been kind to another human being has something in this museum. Every small act of compassion, every moment of choosing gentleness over harshness, every time someone went out of their way to help another person, all of it is here, all of it preserved, all of it honored. Vera led Elena to a door at the back of the museum. The door was painted a soft blue and had Elena's name on it in elegant script. What is this? Elena asked, her heart suddenly beating faster. Your room, Vera said. Everyone who visits the museum has a room. This one belongs to you. She opened the door. Inside was a room filled with objects. Not as many as the main museum, perhaps a few, dozen, but each one carefully displayed and labeled. Elena stepped inside, trembling. The first object she saw was a lunch bag, brown paper, worn and creased. She approached it slowly, reading the plaque. Your lunch bag? You were 7 years old. Your family was struggling financially. There was rarely enough food. One day your mother packed you a lunch, just a sandwich and an apple, but it was made with love, carefully wrapped. A note tucked inside that said, "You are my sunshine." Elena's hand went to her mouth. She had completely forgotten, but now, standing in front of this lunch bag, the memory came flooding back. Her mother's hands, rough from work, carefully wrapping the sandwich. The note in her mother's careful handwriting. The feeling of being loved even when there was so little. She moved to the next exhibit, tears already streaming down her face. A library card, old and laminated, her childhood signature on the back in wobbly letters. "The librarian in your hometown," the plaque read. "Mrs. Chun, you came to the library every day after school because home was chaotic and sometimes scary. Mrs. Chun never asked questions. She just let you sit in the corner and read. She recommended books. She saved books she thought you'd like. She made you feel safe." Elena remembered now. Mrs. Chun, with her kind eyes and quiet voice, the library that had been her refuge. How had she forgotten this? How had this enormous kindness slipped from her memory? A third exhibit, a birthday card, homemade with drawings of balloons and crayon. "Your classmate Tina," the plaque explained. "Your 11th birthday. Your family couldn't afford a party. You told no one at school it was your birthday, but somehow Tina found out. She made you this card and gave it to you at recess. She sang happy birthday and got other kids to join in. You pretended to be embarrassed, but you felt seen. You felt like you mattered." More exhibits, more forgotten kindnesses. The teacher who had stayed after school to help her with math when she was failing. The neighbor who had driven her to the hospital when she sprained her ankle, asking for nothing in return. The friend's mother who had let her stay for dinner 3 nights a week when she was in high school, never mentioning that she knew Elena's home situation was difficult. The college roommate who had lent her money for textbooks and never asked for it back. The stranger on the subway who had helped her when she was lost and crying in a new city. Each one forgotten, each one preserved, each one a moment when someone had chosen kindness, had seen her need and met it without judgment. Elena stood in the center of her room, surrounded by evidence of all the ways she had been loved, all the times people had cared for her, and she wept. When her tears subsided, Vera handed her a tissue and guided her to a bench in the corner of the room. "Why did I forget all of this?" Elena asked, her voice hoarse. "How could I forget?" "Because memory is selective," Vera said gently. "Because our brains don't preserve everything equally. Because sometimes, especially when life is hard, we focus on what hurt us and forget what helped us. It's not intentional. It's just how human minds work." She sat beside Elena on the bench. "You grew up in difficult circumstances. Your brain was in survival mode, always looking for threats, always prepared for the next hardship. In that state, kindnesses can feel unsafe, too good to be true, probably with strings attached. So you accepted them, used them to survive, but didn't hold on to them emotionally. You protected yourself by not getting too attached to kindness in case it was taken away. Elena nodded slowly. This made a terrible kind of sense. But the kindnesses still happened, Vera continued. They still shaped you. The librarian who gave you refuge taught you that books were safe spaces. That's why you read so much now. The teacher who stayed late taught you that education was valuable. That's why you worked so hard in school. The friend's mother who fed you taught you what generosity looked like, even if you don't remember her specifically. You absorbed that lesson. So I'm who I am because of all these forgotten kindnesses, Elena said slowly. Partially, Vera agreed. You're also who you are because of your own strength, your own choices, your own perseverance. But yes, these kindnesses were threads in the fabric of your becoming. They mattered. They helped make you who you are. Elena looked around the room at all the exhibits, all the evidence of compassion she'd received and forgotten. Is there another room? She asked quietly. Vera smiled. Yes, would you like to see it? Vera led Elena to another door, this one painted pale gold. It also had Elena's name on it, but with different script. More elegant, more confident. Inside this room were many more exhibits than the first room. Hundreds, maybe thousands. They filled every surface, lined every wall, hung from the ceiling on delicate threads. This, Vera said, is the room of kindnesses you've forgotten that you gave. Elena stared. That can't be right. There aren't that many. I don't do that many kind things. You don't remember them, Vera corrected. But they happened. Come, let me show. You. The first exhibit was a pencil. Ordinary yellow number 2 pencil, worn down to a stub. 3rd grade, the plaque read. A girl named Sophie forgot her pencil. You lent her this? 1. You never asked for it back. It seems like nothing. But Sophie was terrified of the teacher, terrified of getting in trouble. Your pencil saved her from that fear that day. She remembered your kindness for years, even after she forgot your name. Elena moved to the next exhibit, a napkin with a phone number written on it. College, the plaque said. Your friend Rachel was going through a breakup. 2 in the morning, she called you crying. You stayed on the phone for 3 hours, just listening. Just being present. This napkin has the number she called from the payphone. Remember payphones? You never mentioned it again, thought it was no big deal. But Rachel remembered it as one of the moments she felt most loved in her life. More exhibits. So many more. The time she'd helped an elderly neighbor carry groceries. The time she donated blood, and her blood had saved someone's life, someone she'd never meet. The time she'd smiled at a teenager working a retail job who was having the worst day, and that smile had been the only kindness the teenager received all day. The time she'd let a stressed parent go ahead of her in line at the grocery store. The time she'd stopped to give directions to a lost tourist. The time she'd complimented a coworker's presentation, boosting their confidence at exactly the moment they needed it. The time she'd left a generous tip for a struggling server. The time she'd held the elevator for someone rushing to catch it. On and on, hundreds of small moments, tiny kindnesses that she'd given without thinking, without remembering, without considering them significant. But they were. Each one had mattered to someone. Each one had been a light in someone's darkness. "I don't understand," Elena whispered. "These are just normal things everyone does." "Exactly," Vera said. "These are things everyone does. And that's the point. Kindness isn't rare or special or reserved for saints. It's ordinary. It's daily. It's the small choice to be gentle instead of harsh, helpful instead of indifferent, present instead of absent. And it happens thousands of times a day, all over the world, mostly forgotten, mostly unacknowledged, but no less real, no less important. Elena sank onto another bench, overwhelmed. "Why am I here?" she asked. "Why show me this?" Vera sat beside her again, her hands folded in her lap. "Because you've been feeling hollow," she said. "Empty. Like your life doesn't matter. Like you're just going through motions without meaning." Elena nodded, tears starting again. "You've been measuring your life by the wrong metrics," Vera continued. "Success, achievement, visible impact. Important cases won, money earned, status achieved. And by those metrics you've done well. But they don't fill the emptiness, do they?" "No," Elena admitted. "Because meaning doesn't come from achievement. It comes from connection, from the ways we touch other people's lives, from the kindness we give and receive, from the invisible threads that connect us all together." Vera gestured around the room. "You have been living a meaningful life. You have mattered to hundreds of people in small ways. You have made the world gentler. You have been loved and you have loved, even in moments you don't remember. Your life has been rich with connection, even when you couldn't feel it." Elena looked around at all the exhibits, all the evidence of her own forgotten compassion, all the ways she had mattered without knowing it. "What do I do now?" she asked. "You remember," Vera said simply. "Not every specific moment you couldn't possibly, but you remember that kindness is real, that it matters, that you have the power to matter to people every single day in small ways. And you start noticing it, the kindness you give and receive. You stop taking it for granted. You start seeing the invisible threads." Vera walked Elena to the museum's exit. The night outside was fully dark now, stars visible between the buildings despite the city lights. "Will I remember this?" Elena asked. "Or will I forget, like I forgot everything else?" "You'll remember," Vera assured her. "Not every detail, perhaps, but the feeling, the knowledge that you matter, that kindness is real, that your life has been rich with connection even when you couldn't see it. That will stay with you." Elena stepped outside, then turned back. "Thank you," she said. Vera smiled. "You're welcome. But remember, I did nothing extraordinary. I just showed you what was already there. The kindness was always real. You just needed to remember it. Elena walked home slowly, seeing her familiar route with new eyes. The subway attendant who smiled as he took her fare. The man who held the train door for her. The teenager who offered her a seat. The neighbor who said hello in the elevator. Tiny kindnesses, invisible threads, all around her, all the time. When she got home, her husband was already there, making tea in the kitchen. He looked up when she came in. "You're late? Everything okay?" It was an ordinary question, asked absently, but Elena heard the care underneath it. The noticing, the concern. "Everything's fine," she said. And then, instead of heading to her study like she usually did, she stayed in the kitchen. "Want some company?" He looked surprised but pleased. "Sure." They sat at the kitchen table, drinking tea, talking about nothing important, and Elena felt the invisible thread between them, worn smooth by years of small kindnesses. The way he made her coffee every morning, the way she rubbed his shoulders when he was tense, the way they built a life together out of 1,000 tiny moments of choosing each other, of being gentle, of showing up. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the stuff of movies, but it was real. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. That night, Elena slept deeply and well for the first time in months. And when she woke, in the morning, she couldn't quite remember all the details of the museum. The specifics faded like dreams, but the feeling remained, the knowledge that she was connected, that she mattered, that kindness was the invisible architecture holding everything together, and that was enough to carry her forward into her ordinary, extraordinary, meaning-filled life. You too have a room in the Museum of Forgotten Kindnesses. 2 rooms, actually. One holds all the kindnesses you've received and forgotten. One holds all the kindnesses you've given without remembering. Both rooms are full, fuller than you could imagine. You have been loved more than you remember. You have mattered more than you know. The world is held together by invisible threads of compassion, and you are part of that web. You have always been part of it. Every small kindness counts. Every moment of choosing gentleness over harshness. Every time you hold a door or offer a smile or listen when someone needs to be heard. It all matters, even when no one thanks you, even when you forget it yourself, even when it seems too small to count. It matters. You matter. Let that knowledge settle into your bones now as you drift toward sleep. Let it fill the hollow places. Let it remind you that your life is rich with meaning, even in the ordinary moments. Tomorrow you'll go through your day, and you'll give and receive dozens of small kindnesses. Most you'll forget, but they'll still be real. They'll still matter. They'll still be threads in the great web of connection that holds us all. You are part of something beautiful. You always have been. Rest now, knowing this. Rest in the invisible web of kindness that surrounds you. Sleep well.